In the heart of Rome stands a monument the world calls magnificent. Marble arches, perfect symmetry, engineering brilliance. Millions walk through its shadow every year, taking photographs, admiring its strength. But beneath those stones lies a truth far darker than the postcards ever show. On a cold morning in January, 404 AD, the Colosseum opened its gates for what seemed like just another day of blood. Gladiators tightened their armor in the tunnels below. The crowd climbed into their seats above, ready to decide who would live and who would die. Steel would clash, sand would turn red. Mercy would be shouted like a business transaction. But no one inside that arena understood they were standing at the edge of history. Before the sun set that day, a single unarmed man would step onto the killing floor. The crowd would reveal what it truly believed. An emperor far away would be forced to choose between tradition and faith. And the greatest arena of human slaughter ever built would fall silent forever. Tonight, we uncover what really happened to the final gladiators who fought in the Colosseum, and the shocking moment that ended 324 years of blood. This is not legend. This is not myth. This is the last day Rome cheered for death. The last gate opens. The Colosseum is awake, but it feels hollow. Below the sand, men breathe like prisoners waiting for a god to choose them. Above them, Rome watches with tired eyes, not knowing it is about to witness an ending. Rome, January 404 AD, before sunrise fully breaks over the eastern wall. The tunnels beneath the arena are already alive with metal sounds and nervous discipline. Iron scrapes stone, leather straps bite into skin. Men speak softly, not because they are calm, but because talking is easier than thinking when death is close enough to smell. The hypogeum is a maze of corridors and chambers built to hide the machinery of slaughter cages, ramps, lift platforms, and narrow rooms where fighters become types again. Helmeted, strapped, turned into a role the crowd understands. In this underground darkness stands Tetraites, 31 years old, his body marked by 19 appearances on the sand. Each scar is a memory that never needed words. 7 men have died by his hand. Twice he was beaten, and twice the crowd granted missio, the mercy that keeps a defeated man breathing when the audience decides his performance was worth more than his blood. Tetraites is a murmillo, a heavy fighter shaped by the old Roman taste for weight and inevitability. His short sword hangs at his side like a tool rather than a symbol. His shield is tall and rectangular, built to become a moving wall. His helmet is wide, crested like a fish, a design so common it has become a language in itself. In earlier years, when Rome was still drunk on its own power, that fish crest meant thunder from 50,000 throats. Now it means something quieter, the slow pity of a crowd that still comes, but no longer believes. The Colosseum was made for 50,000. Today it holds 20,000. The upper tiers are thin and patchy, like a smile missing teeth. The people closest to the sand still sit in their places, but even they feel different, less eager, less sure of what they are doing here. The Emperor Honorius is not present. He governs from Ravenna, far from the old heart of Rome, and he does not love these games. He is Christian. Publicly, he calls the spectacle distasteful. Privately, he fears the politics of stopping it. To ban the games outright is to declare war on tradition, on wealthy sponsors, on old families who still pretend the arena is the spine of Rome itself. So the fights continue out of habit, out of infrastructure, out of the stubborn Roman belief that if the Colosseum stops, then something sacred in the city dies with it. This is the insecurity Rome will not admit. The empire is shrinking, the walls are trembling, faith has changed, the provinces are slipping away, and yet the people still demand the one ritual that tells them they are still Rome. Tetraites does not know any of that in the way historians will later frame it. He knows simpler truths. He knows the sequence, the armoring room, the inspection, the waiting, the gate. He knows the feeling when the helmet settles over his skull and his breathing becomes louder inside metal than the world outside it. He knows the particular fear that arrives only when the crowd is distant and the sand is not yet visible, when you can still imagine survival because death has not stepped into the light. And he knows the greed hidden in this system, greed for applause, for wagers, for the editor's reputation, for the crowd's satisfaction. Greed keeps the machine running, even when the empire's soul is exhausted. Above, unseen by Ketrites, another man watches. Not a senator, not a merchant, not a gambler. A monk sits somewhere in the stands, his robe playing against the fading grandeur, his eyes fixed on the arena as if he has come to witness a sin in the flesh. He has traveled far, not for entertainment, but for a belief that burns so fiercely it will not let him remain a spectator. He has heard stories about this place, about men dying while people cheer, and something inside him has refused to accept that a Christian empire can still feed itself on human pain. In the tunnel, Tetrites adjusts his grip and flexes his fingers, testing the familiar weight of readiness. He tells himself what all veterans tell themselves: do not waste fear on imagination. Save it for the moment it becomes useful. The gate will open. The light will strike like a blade. The crowd will become a single sound. Somewhere on the sand, a stranger waits with sharpened metal in his own private prayers. Tetrites takes one breath that feels too large for his chest, and then the iron mechanism begins to move. The door groans, the darkness splits, and the first pale line of arena light spills into the underworld like a warning. And in that thin line of light, before the first step is taken, history holds its breath, because this will be the last time the Colosseum opens for blood, and no one inside it understands what is about to happen next. The feast before the funeral, the night before blood, Rome eats. The fighters sit beneath torchlight like animals at auction, and the crowd decides who looks ready to die. The Sena Libera begins after sunset, when the city's shadows are long and forgiving. It is called the free feast, but nothing about it is free. The gladiators are brought into a public hall near the Colosseum, seated at long wooden tables beneath oil lamps that hiss and flicker against stone walls. Platters of roasted meat, bread soaked in wine, olives, figs, and heavy stews are placed before them. The smell is rich, indulgent, almost celebratory, but the mood is not celebration. It is inspection. Citizens drift through the hall slowly, circling the tables as if walking through a marketplace. They do not speak to the gladiators as equals. They study them. They evaluate muscle definition, the thickness of forearms, the way a man holds his shoulders. They search faces for fear, the way gamblers search dice for weakness. Wagers are whispered and recorded. Odds shift based on appetite alone. A man who eats confidently is said to believe he will live. A man who pushes food around his plate is marked as already halfway to the grave. Tetrites knows the ritual. He has attended 18 of these feasts before. He tears bread with steady hands, drinks moderately, answers questions without arrogance. When a young spectator asks about the scar that runs from his collarbone to his ribcage, he recounts the story calmly, almost casually. The crowd enjoys scars because scars prove survival. Scars mean entertainment lasted longer than expected. Tetrites performs confidence the way he performs combat, controlled, measured, deliberate. Inside, something tighter coils. The hall is loud, but beneath the noise is an unspoken understanding. Tomorrow, at least one of these men will not return. Across from him sits Priscus, older now, his face marked not only by blades but by time. He eats slowly. His eyes rarely lift from his plate. Veterans understand something the crowd does not. It is not strength that decides survival. It is timing, restraint, and the favor of an audience that has grown unpredictable. In earlier decades, mercy was common for skilled fighters. In 404, mercy is thinner. Rome itself feels thinner. Further down the table sits Hermes, 19 years old, a Honorius whose body carries little armor, but too much expectation. He laughs louder than necessary. He speaks quickly when addressed. His hands tremble when he thinks no one is watching. He has fought twice and won twice. He has killed twice. The crowd is intrigued by youth, because youth suggests spectacle. Youth suggests drama. But youth also carries insecurity like a scent. Several gamblers glance at Hermes with narrowed eyes, adjusting their bets not because of his skill, but because of his nerves. And at the far end sits Columbus, the condemned secutor. No one lingers near him. His presence disrupts the illusion. A professional gladiator fights for purse, for fame, for the possibility of missio. A condemned man fights because execution waits regardless. The crowd cannot save him. His death is expected. He eats without expression, chewing mechanically, as if fueling a machine he no longer claims as his own. His armor tomorrow will be smooth and rounded, designed to resist the net. But tonight, stripped of helmet and shield, he looks disturbingly ordinary. That is what unsettles the spectators. Not that he might die, but that he looks like them. The torches flicker higher as wine flows more freely among the guests. Laughter grows louder. Coins exchange hands. Predictions become confident. Greed hums beneath the hall like a second heartbeat. Editors need spectacle. Gamblers need certainty. Rome needs reassurance that it is still powerful enough to command life and death on demand. The feast is not kindness, it is advertisement. It reminds the public what it is about to consume. Outside, beyond the stone walls, the city sleeps unevenly. Churches rise where temples once dominated. Sermons condemn bloodshed, while inside this hall, citizens sharpen their anticipation for it. Christianity has been Rome's official faith for decades now, yet the Colosseum still prepares its ritual slaughter. This contradiction does not feel stable. It feels like a rope pulled from both ends, fibers beginning to split. As the feast winds down, the gladiators are escorted back beneath the arena. The torches above are extinguished one by one, plunging the hall into darkness. In the tunnels, silence settles differently. There are no spectators here, no applause. Only the steady drip of water from stone and the distant echo of Rome breathing above them. Tetrites lies on a narrow cot and stares at the ceiling he cannot see. Hermes turns restlessly, replaying imagined victories in his mind. Priscus closes his eyes and counts his breaths. Columbus does not move at all. And somewhere in the city, the monk who will step onto the sand tomorrow kneels in prayer, believing he is walking toward salvation. None of them understand that this feast was not merely preparation. It was farewell. Mercy is a business. In the arena, mercy is never kindness. It is currency, calculated and cold. And today, Rome is running out of both. Morning breaks over the Colosseum without ceremony. The sun spills across cracked stone and half-filled seats, illuminating a structure that remembers when 50,000 voices could shake its foundations. Now, barely 20,000 gather, scattered like doubt across marble tiers. The banners still hang. The trumpets still sound. The machinery still moves. But something inside the spectacle feels hollow, as if the arena itself understands that it is performing a ritual already condemned. Below the sand, Tetrites stands ready. His armor is tightened in the same order it has been for years. Shield strapped, greaves buckled, helmet lowered last. The metal narrows his breathing, turns each inhale into a measured echo inside bronze. He does not pray. Gladiators learn early that prayer in the hypogeum is dangerous. It suggests hope beyond skill, and hope is fragile. Skill is steel. When the gate opens, light crashes into him like a wave. The arena roars not thunderous, not imperial, but loud enough to remind him that he is owned for this moment. Owned by expectation, owned by appetite. He steps onto the sand, and across from him emerges a Threx, younger, Lighter, curved blade gleaming like a hooked promise. The pairing is deliberate. Heavy against swift, shield against angle. Rome has always loved contrast. A salute the editor's box. Ritual words pass their lips, ancient and stripped of meaning through repetition. The signal drops. The Threx moves first, circling right, testing the edge of Tetrai's shield with shallow strikes. The curved Sika taps wood, scrapes bronze, searches for weakness. Tetrites does not chase. He absorbs. He knows that impatience kills more effectively than steel. The younger fighter grows bolder, lunging toward the gap between helmet and shoulder. Tetrites raises the scutum, pivots, and drives the shield forward with his full weight. The impact sends the Threx stumbling. Sand erupts beneath their feet. Blades flash. The crowd leans forward. A shallow cut opens on the Threx's thigh. Blood darkens the pale surface. It is not fatal, but it is expensive. Every drop costs endurance. Every heartbeat becomes an investment. The Threx fights harder now, desperation replacing discipline. And desperation is loud. Tetrites waits for it. The decisive moment comes quietly. A mistimed hook. A shield turn. A thrust. The gladius bites deeper this time. The Threx collapses to one knee. Silence ripples through the crowd. The defeated man raises one finger. Submission. Here is where myth deceives. It is not a thumb that decides. It is sound, volume, the swell and dip of human voices merging into verdict. Mercy is not moral. It is economic. If the crowd believes the performance was worthy, the fighter lives. If the spectacle disappointed, blood completes the show. The noise builds, not bloodthirsty measured. Tetrite stands still, gladius hovering inches from the exposed throat. He does not look at his opponent. He looks at the editor's box, waiting for the interpretation of the crowd's appetite. The verdict comes. Missio, the Threx will live. Attendants rush in, lifting him carefully, escorting him through the gate of life. The crowd exhales. They feel generous. They feel civilized. They believe they have demonstrated restraint. Tetrites lowers his sword and walks from the arena without triumph. He understands what just happened. Mercy today does not mean compassion. It means the arena cannot afford to lose too many professionals. Skilled fighters are scarce now. The training schools are half empty. The empire is unstable. Killing a veteran for spectacle alone would be wasteful. Mercy is preservation of inventory. In the tunnels, the wounded Threx is carried to the medical chamber. Physicians examine the cut with clinical detachment. Stitch, bind, return him to usefulness. The machinery operates smoothly, indifferent to emotion. Above, the crowd settles back into its seats. They feel entertained. They feel righteous. But a question hovers in the air like smoke from extinguished torches. Why does this feel smaller than it once did? Why does victory feel muted? Because the Colosseum is no longer the heart of Rome. It is an echo chamber of a past belief that is losing strength. Christianity has reshaped the empire's moral spine. Sermons denounce blood for pleasure. Bishops speak of sin and redemption. Yet here, sand still absorbs human suffering. The contradiction tightens. In the stands, the monk watches. His hands grip the stone barrier. He has witnessed the wound. He has witnessed the crowd deciding whether a man breathes. He has witnessed mercy treated like a business transaction. And something inside him shifts from outrage to action. The next bout is being prepared. The sand is being raked smooth again. And Rome, confident that it still controls life and death with a shout, does not yet realize that its control is about to be challenged in a way it has never faced before. The condemned has no mercy. Some men fight for glory. Some fight for survival. And some walk onto the sand already sentenced to disappear. By midday, the sun hangs directly above the open crown of the Colosseum, pouring light onto stone that has known centuries of blood. The crowd has thinned further. Spectators drift in and out, speaking lazily of the morning bouts, as if discussing weather. Vendors shout half-heartedly. Children laugh in places where once senators leaned forward in solemn intensity. The empire is tired, and the arena reflects it. Below the sand, Columbus stands in silence while attendants secure the final straps of his armor. Unlike Tetrites, unlike the professional veterans who understand the economy of mercy, Columbus has no negotiation left. He is a condemned man. His crime is lost to history, perhaps theft, perhaps desertion, perhaps rebellion. The arena does not care. Its function is not justice. It is conclusion. His helmet is smooth and rounded, forged specifically to resist the weighted net of a Retiarius. The eye holes are narrow, coin-sized slits that reduce his world to a tunnel of light. He will fight nearly blind. He will trust sound more than sight. He will advance not because he believes he will win, but because retreat offers nothing. Across the hypogeum, Hermes prepares. 19 years old, barely armored, the net coiled carefully over his shoulder, the trident balanced in his hand. Youth has returned to his face after the earlier bout adrenaline disguised as confidence. He has killed twice. The arena has rewarded him with cheers. Today, he believes he can do it again. When the gates open, contrast steps onto the sand. Columbus emerges heavy, armored, shield raised like a moving wall. Hermes glides lightly, nearly naked beneath the sun, quick-footed and sharp-eyed. The pairing is deliberate. Spectacle thrives on imbalance. The crowd straightens in their seats. This is a fight they understand. Predator and prey, strength and speed, armor and vulnerability. The signal drops. Columbus charges immediately. There is no circling, no testing. Desperation compresses his strategy into one brutal principle: close distance. Get inside the net's range. End it fast. Hermes reacts instinctively, stepping back, casting the net in a wide arc. The weighted mesh spreads beautifully in the air, a silver bloom against the pale sky. It lands across Columbus' shield and shoulder. For a heartbeat, the crowd gasps in tangled, perfect throw. But the smooth helmet does its work. The net slides instead of catching. Columbus keeps moving. His shield arm is restricted, but not trapped. He pushes forward with violent intent. Sand sprays beneath armored feet. Hermes retreats again, heart hammering. He thrusts with the trident, aiming for the gap between helmet and shoulder guard. The narrow strip of exposed flesh every Retiarius is trained to exploit. The 3 points strike metal first, scraping, sliding, and one finds the seam. A wet sound follows. Columbus stumbles. The trident withdraws stained red. For a moment, the world holds still. The condemned man drops to his knees, and forward, the weight of armor dragging him down. No finger rises. No submission is requested. His fate was sealed before he stepped into light. The attendants approach quickly, carrying a heated iron. They press it against exposed skin to confirm what the crowd already sees. No reaction. No breath. Columbus is lifted and carried through the western gate, the gate of death. Beyond it lies the spoliarium, where armor is stripped from cooling bodies and prepared for reuse. His shield will serve another. His helmet will crown another condemned man. Only his flesh is discarded. The crowd cheers not wildly, but approvingly. They have received what they paid for. A clean kill. A clear ending. The arithmetic satisfies them. Hermes stands over the darkening patch of sand, chest rising and falling rapidly. He has killed for the 3rd time. Applause crashes over him. He raises the trident high, absorbing their approval like sunlight. He does not yet understand what that applause will cost him later, when the arena is silent and memory replaces noise. Above, the monk grips the stone railing harder. He has watched a man die for the pleasure of strangers. He has watched spectators cheer as equipment was salvaged and a body was removed like refuse. And he feels something sharper than grief. Conviction. The sand is raked smooth again. The blood disappears beneath pale grains. The illusion of freshness returns. But the monk knows what the sand is hiding. And soon he will step onto it. Not with a weapon, with a challenge. The man who entered the killing floor, the crowd wanted blood. Instead, a single unarmed man stepped between the blades. And Rome revealed what it truly believed. The afternoon sun had begun its slow descent when it happened. The arena was restless, caught between fatigue and hunger. Several bouts had already been fought. Sand had been raked smooth so many times that it no longer pretended to clean, it simply looked tired. The crowd's energy had thinned, but not its appetite. Even a diminished Rome still wanted spectacle. Two gladiators faced each other in the center of the Colosseum, their movements careful, calculating. Steel rang against steel. The rhythm was familiar, almost mechanical. The crowd leaned forward, ready for the next wound, the next decision, the next performance of mercy disguised as morality. Then a figure moved in the stands. At first, it was barely noticeable. A man in a simple monk's robe, climbing over the low barrier that separated spectators from the sacred sand. No armor, no weapon, no helmet, just cloth and conviction. He dropped into the arena. The sound shifted instantly, not silence confusion. Gasps rolled outward like ripples in water. The two fighters stepped back instinctively, blades raised, unsure whether this was some strange addition to the program. The monk moved between them with trembling determination. His face was thin, sunburned from travel. His hands were empty but raised, palms outward, as if warding off violence itself. This was Telemachus. He had traveled from the eastern provinces after hearing of Rome's games. He had come not to observe, but to confront. In a Christian empire, he believed this could not continue, not this ritualized killing, not this spectacle disguised as tradition. His faith told him that blood spilled for entertainment was an abomination, and so he did the only thing that felt honest. He placed his body where swords were meant to meet. The gladiators hesitated. Professionals understand risk. Killing an opponent in combat is one thing. Killing an unarmed holy man in front of thousands is another. They lowered their blades slightly, uncertainty flickering through helmets and eyes. Telemachus began to shout. The words are lost to history. Perhaps he cried out in the name of Christ. Perhaps he pleaded for the men to stop. Perhaps he rebuked the crowd directly. Whatever he said, it was not received as moral revelation. It was received as interruption. The first stone struck his shoulder, small, thrown from somewhere in the lower tiers. Then another, sharper, hitting his temple. The crowd did not deliberate. They reacted. This was their arena, their ritual, their entitlement. A monk had invaded their spectacle. More objects followed: stones, fragments of pottery, pieces of food, a rain of anger from every direction. Telemachus staggered, but did not retreat. He remained between the fighters, absorbing the assault meant to protect a belief the crowd no longer shared. The gladiators backed away fully now. They were no longer the center of attention. The spectacle had shifted. The audience had become participant. Shock spread across faces as realization dawned too late. The crowd was killing him. Theodoret, writing decades later, would record that the spectators stoned Telemachus to death. It was not an ordered execution. It was collective fury, the kind of fury that erupts when insecurity is challenged. Rome felt its identity slipping. Christianity had reshaped its laws, its symbols, its gods. The gains were one of the last pieces of old power left intact. And this monk had dared to say should end. A final stone struck his skull. Telemachus collapsed onto the sand, the same sand that had absorbed centuries of condemned men and professional fighters alike. Blood spread beneath him, darker than the earlier stains. No raking followed. No attendants rushed to confirm death. For the first time in its history, The Colosseum had not consumed a gladiator. It had consumed a protest. The crowd grew quieter. The energy that had fueled their violence drained as quickly as it had ignited. What had they done? A holy man lay dead because he asked for mercy in a place built on its absence. The gladiators stood motionless, weapons lowered. The program had shattered. There was no applause, no verdict to interpret, no clean narrative, just a body. And in that body lay something Rome could not ignore. Within days, word would reach Ravenna, and Emperor Honorius would be forced to decide whether Rome's identity belonged to blood or to belief. The Colosseum had witnessed countless deaths, but this one would end it. When the gates never opened again, the monk was dead. The sand was still warm, and Rome finally looked at what it had become. News travels faster when it carries shame. Within days, the report reached Ravenna, where Emperor Honorius governed from behind safer walls than Rome's aging heart could offer. A monk had been stoned to death inside the Colosseum, not by gladiators, not by criminals, by citizens, by the same crowd that had cheered executions minutes earlier. The message was simple and catastrophic. A Christian empire had murdered one of its own to protect a pagan spectacle. Honorius had avoided the games for years. Publicly, he called them distasteful. Privately, he feared confrontation. The aristocracy still clung to the arena as proof that Rome had not weakened. Wealthy sponsors invested in blood, because blood still sold. Even as churches rose across the empire, the Colosseum remained a defiant relic of an older belief, one that equated power with domination and entertainment with death. But Telemachus changed the calculation. This was no longer about tradition. It was about legitimacy. Bishops would not remain silent. Clergy would not excuse the killing of a monk whose only weapon had been conviction. The optics were unbearable. The empire claimed Christ as its foundation. Yet in its most famous monument, it had crushed a man for speaking his name. Honorius issued the decree. The gladiatorial games were banned. The exact words of the edict have not survived intact, but its impact did. The gates that had opened for more than 3 centuries did not open again for human combat. The machinery beneath the sand elevators, trapdoors, cages fell silent. The Heronari who raked blood into pale grains had nothing to smooth. The spoliarium received no more stripped bodies. For the first time since 80 AD, the Colosseum stood without a schedule of death. The silence must have been disorienting. Tetrites learned of the decree not in triumph, but in uncertainty. 19 fights behind him. A life structured by violence and survival. Now the profession that had shaped his identity vanished overnight. Some retired gladiators became bodyguards. Others faded into obscurity. Tetrites likely carried his scars into quieter employment, guarding doorways instead of crossing sand. But the roar of the crowd would never return. The muscle memory remained. The purpose did not. Priscus, aging and careful, found his career ended without ceremony. No grand farewell, no final ovation, just absence. The world no longer required his precision, his timing, his mastery of angles and steel. He survived, but survival without relevance carries its own quiet wound. Hermes, 19 years old, 3 kills to his name, faced a different terror. He had trained for a life that no longer existed. His skill with net and trident meant nothing beyond the arena. Perhaps he joined the army, trading spectacle for war. Perhaps he drifted into anonymity, another young man carrying the weight of 3 deaths in a society that preferred to forget what it once applauded. Columbus was already in the burial pit beyond the city walls, stripped of armor that outlived him. His name survived. His crime did not. The Colosseum itself did not collapse immediately. Animal hunts continued for another century. Wild beasts replaced men. Blood still darkened the sand. The crowd still gathered. The empire could surrender gladiators, but not spectacle. The moral line shifted conveniently. Killing animals felt easier to justify than killing men. But the transformation had begun. Earthquakes struck in the decades that followed. Sections of wall crumbled. Rome was sacked by the Visigoths in 410, only 6 years after the ban. Population shrank. Wealth drained. Maintenance faded. The Colosseum, once a symbol of engineered dominance, became a quarry. Stones were removed to build churches, palaces, fortifications. Iron clamps were pried from walls, leaving scars visible to this day. The hypogeum filled with rubble. The arena floor collapsed. The machinery of slaughter became archaeology. Today, millions walk through its arches. They photograph the ruins. They purchase miniature helmets from souvenir stands. They admire Roman engineering. They speak of grandeur. Few speak of Telemachus lying broken on the sand. Few speak of Tetrites adjusting his shield for the last time. Few speak of the condemned whose bodies vanished without inscription. 400,000 men died in that arena across 5 centuries. Their names are not carved into its walls. The building remembers its architecture. It does not remember them. The Colosseum stands as a monument, not to glory, but to what human beings can normalize when enough voices cheer at once. The gates are open now for tourists, but they have never opened again for gladiators. And the sand, long gone, has finally stopped drinking blood.